each other, and the love that they have is really, really moving. And I just wanted to do anything I could to support them. There's so much more she could have said, but because she's such a royal watcher, I don't really pay attention.
She's always been very nice to everyone. She's never been mean to anyone. One of the problems was that she kept I take my time and say I sound out words. Meghan Markle's childhood best friend just became famous online, and it's not for the reason you'd think. People are actually saying she doesn't exist. Yeah, you heard that right, Nanaki Pretty. The woman who's known Meghan since they were 2 years old had to prove she was real on social media because wild theories got so crazy that folks started saying their friendship that lasted for many years was completely fake. Her response absolutely perfect, according to some, and not me who's been living my memories. And here's the thing, this isn't just some random internet fight. What's happening right now with Nanaki is showing something way bigger about Meghan's past. Pay school graduating class of 2020. For the past couple weeks, I've been planning on saying, and Harry's got to be watching all of this happen with total horror. What Nanaki knows about Meghan is wild, and you're going to want to stick around for this. Real quick though, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications because this gets crazy. Let's get into it. So, listen, before we get into why people are trying to erase Nanaki from history, you need to understand who she actually is too. Meghan. This isn't some friend from college or a Hollywood friend that Meghan picked up along the way. We're talking about someone who's been in Meghan's life since they were 2 years old. The last time this happened, it didn't really end well, and this is the problem for Meghan Markle. It seems like each and every time think about that for a second. Most people can't even remember being 2 years old, but these girls, they've got a shared past that goes back to their earliest memories. They grew up together in the truest way possible. We're talking about playing in sandboxes, first days of school, awkward middle school times, dealing with high school drama together, the whole journey. This is a kind of friendship where you don't even have to explain yourself because the other person already knows your entire story. They've lived it with you. There are photos of them together going back many years. So, he's a very complicated, a depressed and not smart man who is looking for a role. Not just 1 or 2 pictures, but so many snapshots of a real lived friendship. Trips they took, birthdays they celebrated, random everyday moments that got captured on camera. The kind of stuff you can't fake even if you tried. And here's something that'll totally blow your mind. There's this famous photo of teenage Meghan and Nanaki standing right outside Buckingham Palace during a trip to the UK. Can you imagine a young Meghan Markle probably dreaming about princes and fairy tales, like so many teenage girls do, standing in front of the very palace she'd one day walk into as an actual duchess? Meghan Markle plans to leave Prince Harry to become a billionaire and run for the governor of California. And here's the kicker, he believes her next move. She had no clue what was waiting for her. No idea that years later she'd be living that fantasy and then watching it all fall apart. That photo is like this weird time capsule moment that makes the whole story even crazier. Now, royal book writer Tom Bower actually looked into their friendship when he was doing all his research. For his book, this isn't just internet gossip or some tabloid making stuff up. Bower is the kind of guy who digs deep, talks to real people, finds the actual story. And royal expert Kinsey, she didn't just take Nanaki's word for it either. The royals owe me, a Harry owes me, a Meghan owes me. Meghan Markle's strange. She went out of her way to stand up for her, saying straight up that she's talked to Nanaki face to face, had real conversations with her, and knows for a fact she's exactly who she says she is. Kinsey basically told people to stop creating drama where there isn't any, and focus on what actually matters. So, when you've got people online suddenly saying Nanaki isn't real, or that this friendship that lasted for many years was somehow fake, it's honestly silly. Like, what are they gonna say next? That all those childhood photos were photoshopped? What if the tears you saw weren't real? What if grief, something sacred, raw, and painfully human, that Tom Bower made her up for his book? It's ridiculous. Here's what makes this friendship so important, though. Nanaki didn't just know Meghan as the polished, camera-ready duchess or even as the actress trying to make it in Hollywood. She knew her before all of that, before there was an image to protect, before there were PR teams writing every statement. before every move was planned for maximum impact. Nanaki watched Meghan change from a regular kid with big dreams into someone totally determined to make those dreams happen, no matter what it took. Meghan Markle just experienced one of the most embarrassing nights of her post-royal life, and it all went down at what was supposed to be a cozy women. She saw the big goals kicking in early, the drive that wouldn't quit, the way relationships and opportunities got approached. She was there for the messy parts, the real parts, the parts that don't make it into the Instagram version of someone's life. And that's exactly what makes what happened next so incredibly telling, because when you've known someone since you were both in diapers, when you share 3 decades of history together, walking away from that friendship doesn't just happen by accident. So, what happened to this supposedly unbreakable friendship? Here's where things get really messy. And so did so many other people whose names we know and whose names we do not know. Stephen Clark. His life mattered. The friendship didn't just fade away naturally like so many childhood bonds do when people grow up and move in different directions. There was no slow drift, no gradual growing apart. No, we just lost touch over the years situation. No, this thing ended suddenly. Like someone flipped a switch and 3 decades of history just got erased overnight. And the timing, that's what tells you everything you need to know. As Meghan's relationship with Prince Harry started getting serious, something weird started happening. Old friends, people who'd been in her life for years, just started disappearing. Prince Harry will not make Meghan Markle a billionaire. She wants to be a billionaire. So, who will? A new man. At some point, if it's offered up, it may. One by one, longtime connections got quietly cut off. It wasn't just Nanaki, either. There's a whole pattern here of people who knew pre-royal Meghan suddenly finding themselves on the outside looking in. And Nanaki, she was one of the biggest losses. The woman who'd been by Meghan's side since they were toddlers, who'd seen every stage of her life, who knew her better than almost anyone, suddenly found herself completely shut out. No explanation, no big fight that people heard about. Just cut off. Done. Erased from Meghan's new story like those 3 decades together never even happened. That the man she had told him about in March 2016 earlier was Harry now. Think about what that actually means for a second. You don't just walk away from a friendship that covers nearly your entire life without a really specific reason. This isn't like unfollowing someone on social media. This is someone who knew you before you even had memories, who was there for every major moment, every struggle, every success. Walking away from that takes a deliberate decision, and here's the thing that should make anyone pause. Nanaki knew too much. She'd seen the real Meghan, the one before the fame, before Hollywood, before the Duchess title, and Thomas Markle just broke his silence, revealing shocking secrets about Meghan that nobody saw coming. In a stunning mood, carefully managed public image, she knew the girl who wasn't performing for cameras, who hadn't perfected the art of saying exactly the right thing at exactly the right moment. That version of Meghan, the one Nanaki grew up with, that's not necessarily the version that works in the royal spotlight. When you're trying to build a specific image, when you're creating a story about who you are and where you came from, people who remember the unfiltered version of you become complicated. They've got stories that might not fit the new story you're telling. They remember things you might prefer stayed in the past. Understand, she couldn't be number one. There was only one number one in the monarchy, and she didn't understand hierarchy. And she thought that, in Nanaki, she had 3 decades worth of memories, insights, and inside knowledge about who Meghan really was before the world was watching. That's the kind of thing that could become seriously inconvenient when you're trying to control your story. So yeah, the fact that this friendship got cut off right as Meghan was moving into royal life, that's not a coincidence. That's a choice. And it's a choice that says a lot about what matters more. Decades of genuine friendship or protecting a carefully built image. What makes this even more telling is that, oh, Meghan, you might want to buckle up because your ex-bestie Nanaki Purdy just dropped a mysterious message on X. The tweet reads, Nanaki wasn't the only one. She's just the most visible example because of how long they've known each other, and because she's been willing to talk about it. But the pattern repeats itself over and over. People who knew Meghan before the fame, before the royal wedding, before the glossy magazine covers, they've got a way of ending up on the outside. It's like there's this dividing line, and everyone who knew the old Meghan got left on the wrong side of it. You've got to wonder what Harry thinks when he sees a pattern. Did he notice all these longtime friends disappearing? Did he ask questions about why someone Meghan had known since age 2 suddenly wasn't in the picture anymore? Yeah, she wants to be a billionaire. So, who will a new man at some point? If it's offered up, it might happen. That is why she's constantly. Or was he too caught up in everything else to see what was happening? Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Nanaki hasn't just been sitting quietly in the background. She's actually talked about Meghan over the years. And what she shared paints a pretty revealing picture. This isn't someone trying to get attention. This is someone who watched a 3-decade friendship disappear and finally decided to share what she saw. One of the biggest things Nanaki's mentioned is Meghan's obsession with princesses from a really young age. Ladies and gentlemen, grab your popcorn because now we'll uncover the details of. We're not talking about normal little girl Disney dreams. This was something more intense. Meghan was genuinely captivated by royal life, the glamour, the status, everything that came with it. That photo of teenage Meghan outside Buckingham Palace, that wasn't just some random tourist moment. She was drawn to that world in a way that went beyond casual interest. It's wild to think about now knowing how everything played out, but here's what really stands out. Nanaki's talked about how Meghan approached relationships, and this is where things get uncomfortable. Royal life. He by birth. I will give him that duty, that respect. I will. Some of you don't want to, but I will. But her, no. There was strategy involved, planning, thinking several moves ahead. Relationships weren't just about connection or building something genuine. They were about what those relationships could do, where they could lead, what doors they could open. And when a relationship stopped serving its purpose, that's when things would end. Not gradually, but just done. Moving on to the next thing, take Trevor Engelson, Meghan's first husband. Nanaki saw that whole relationship from the beginning. Trevor was there during the struggling actress years when Meghan was grinding it out in Hollywood, dealing with auditions. And I'm so glad you guys get to meet Courtney as well. We've been friends since college, just so you know. It's really in rejections. He was supportive. They built a life together. But then Meghan landed Suits and suddenly things were different. She had real fame, connections that mattered. And not long after that career breakthrough, the marriage fell apart. The timing of it all fits into a pattern that's hard to ignore. What Nanaki observed was this cycle that kept repeating. People would be important to Meghan, would play a big role in her life for whatever stage she was in. But once that stage ended, once those people had served their purpose, they'd get thrown away. It wasn't just romantic relationships either. It was friendships, professional connections. Did you miss the good old word salad? Well, Meghan Markle is back serving it with a side of self-promotion and a garnish of forced relatability. Picture family dynamics. There was this constant cycle of people coming in and then being pushed out when they no longer fit the new version of her life. The really telling part is how clean the breaks were. When Meghan was done with someone, there wasn't messy back and forth or attempts to fix things. It was just over. And for Nanaki, who had been there since age 2, who thought their friendship was different, getting cut off the same way everyone else did, must have been heartbreaking. But it also gave her this unique perspective on who Meghan really is when the cameras aren't rolling. What happens when a Hollywood star turned royal sits across from one of America's most beloved talk show hosts? Only 4. She saw the ambition, but she also saw the willingness to leave people behind without looking back. While Nanaki's dealing with people claiming she doesn't exist, Meghan's struggling to figure out what she actually wants to do with her post-royal life. And honestly, it's painful to watch. Remember American Riviera Orchard? That lifestyle brand that was supposed to be her big comeback. The whole rollout was met with confusion and mockery. People couldn't figure out what it was supposed to be, what it was selling, or why anyone should care. Thomas Markle, Meghan's father, has stepped into the light with photographs nobody expected. And a guy. Was it jam? Home goods? A lifestyle philosophy? Nobody knew, including apparently Meghan herself. And that's just the latest in a long line of ventures that fizzled out. The podcast got canceled. The Netflix deal produced minimal content. Nothing's created the cultural impact that was promised. It's this pattern of grabbing opportunities, making big promises and then not delivering. Here's what's really going on. Meghan can't decide what her brand actually is. She wanted to be a humanitarian, but questions started coming. She wanted to be a Hollywood producer, a planner. If the palace couldn't provide financial freedom, she'd find it elsewhere. She didn't marry a prince for love, but the content deals haven't produced huge results. She wanted to be a lifestyle guru, but American Riviera Orchard became a joke. Nothing's sticking because nothing feels real. It all feels like trying on different costumes to see which one gets the best reaction. Royal experts have pointed this out. They're watching Meghan put her hands in everything but commit to nothing, creating this trail of chaos. Every venture gets announced with fanfare, then quietly disappears when it doesn't work out. Meanwhile, her past keeps catching up with her. Higher foundation of the modern royal fairy tale. We're not talking about a tweet or a Reddit theory. That's what makes Nanaki's viral moment so important. It's a reminder that Meghan's left this trail of thrown-away relationships and burned bridges. And those people remember who she really is. Trevor Engelson knows the truth about how their marriage ended. The Markle family knows their version of events. Nanaki knows what growing up with Meghan was really like. And as Meghan becomes more desperate for attention, as these ventures keep failing, more of these voices are willing to speak up. The carefully built image is cracking. You won't believe what Meghan Markle's former bestie, Jessica Mulroney, is about to do. Hold on to your hats because, and the real story's leaking through. Here's the thing that keeps getting glossed over. Nanaki isn't some isolated case. She's part of a much bigger pattern. There's this whole trail of thrown-away connections following Meghan around. Family members, professional relationships, people who were supposedly close at different points. They're all telling remarkably similar stories about being in Meghan's orbit, and then suddenly getting pushed out. The family situation alone is wild. You've got the Markles speaking out, sharing their side about how relationships got worse and shocked me, and now she meant it to me. I don't know why, but I don't believe him. Lost my dad in this. Communication stopped. Now family drama happens to everyone, right? But the way these relationships ended, the complete cutting of ties. The fact that it all happened around the same time Meghan's life was changing. That's not normal family tension. These are people who knew her before the fame, and their memories don't always line up with the image she's trying to project now. What keeps coming up is this idea that relationships with Meghan had a shelf life. People would be in her inner circle for a while, serving whatever role she needed at that moment. Emotional support, career connections, maintaining a certain image. I was instantly enraged from this 10-second clip. It just annoyed me. And so I want you to listen to this. But once that need was fulfilled, things would change. The closeness would fade. Communication would drop off, and eventually the person would be gone. And it wasn't mutual. It was a one-sided decision that left people confused about what they'd done wrong. Former friends have talked about this. Being really close to Meghan, thinking they had this genuine connection. Then watching her move on and realizing they weren't going to be part of it. Trevor was there through the struggling years and got left behind when success came. Nanaki knew her from toddlerhood and got erased when royal life started. Breaking today. Meghan Markle has put shocking new claims about her marriage to Prince Harry to one side. It began like any other early morning. Each story has its own details, but the overall arc is consistent. Close connection, sudden distance, complete cutoff. The contrast between Meghan's public image and what people who knew her say is getting harder to ignore. Publicly, she presents herself as someone who values relationships, who's been hurt by circumstances beyond her control. But people from her past are painting a different picture. Someone calculating, someone who makes decisions based on strategy rather than genuine feeling. Someone willing to walk away from decades of history without looking back. Just saying you need to see what's going on with Balenciaga. I have, and as a photographer, this works. And as her importance slips, these voices are getting louder. That's what makes Nanaki's viral moment so important. She's representing all these other people who got thrown away. Every time someone from Meghan's past speaks up and gets attacked, it reinforces this pattern. But you can't silence everyone forever. You can't rewrite history when so many people lived through it and remember what actually happened. So where does all of this leave Harry? Because honestly, his situation has got to be absolutely nightmarish at this point. Think about everything he gave up to be with Meghan in the sealess cold. Back in Montecito, the self-styled Queen of California was battling an all-too-familiar problem. We're not talking about small sacrifices here. He walked away from his military titles, the thing he was genuinely passionate about and good at. He destroyed his relationship with his family, the only family he's ever going to have. He left his home country, the place where he actually understood how everything worked and had a role that mattered. And for what? For a life in Montecito that looks nothing like what he was promised. Remember all those promises? Meghan told him they'd be global humanitarian superstars, that Hollywood would embrace them with open arms. Who wronged whom in that relationship? Well, I think we got to start with the Oprah interview. I think that we've all counted that they'd be more successful, more impactful, more free outside the royal system than they ever could have been within it. She painted this picture of a life where they'd have all the influence and none of the restrictions, where they could do meaningful work and be celebrated for it, where everything would just be better. And Harry believed it. He bet everything on those promises. But here's the brutal reality. Every single promise has proven false. They're not global humanitarian superstars. They're struggling to stay relevant. Hollywood didn't embrace them the way Meghan said it would. I'm going to go off the cuff here because I do think what's really key. If there is one brave young man in this room, the content deals haven't produced the huge success she promised. They're not more impactful outside the royal system. If anything, they've lost the platform that actually gave them reach and influence. The freedom Meghan talked about. It's turned into Harry watching his wife desperately trying to stay in the spotlight by attending events that would have been beneath her before, launching brands that flop, starting projects that go nowhere. This isn't the life he signed up for. This isn't what he was told it would be. And here's the really devastating part. Harry can't admit any of this publicly. He's completely trapped. Did you ever see anything in Meghan as she was growing up before the rift, before she met Harry? He burned every single bridge getting to where he is now. He trashed his family in multiple interviews, wrote a whole book airing private conversations and complaints, positioned himself as a victim of royal cruelty and institutional racism. He made it about good versus evil, about choosing love over duty, about escaping a toxic system. To turn around now and say actually maybe Meghan wasn't being entirely honest about what our life would look like, or maybe her ambition exceeded her actual abilities, would be admitting he destroyed his entire life. Meghan Markle's former bestie Jessica Mulroney posted a mysterious quote by the Waken celebrities, and I use that term for nothing. It would mean facing the fact that he gave up everything that mattered for promises that were never going to happen. So what does he do? He stays silent. He stands next to Meghan while she flails around trying different ventures, hoping something will stick. He watches her desperation become more obvious by the day. He sees a pattern of failed projects, the burned bridges from her past catching up with her, the voices of people like Nanaki getting louder. And he can't say anything because saying something means admitting he was wrong. It means admitting that everyone who warned him might have had a point. Is when Meghan Markle goes to meet Harry's friends for the first time, and they're all his old mates. From the royal days. They've all been. It means facing the reality that he traded a life of genuine purpose and family connection for a life of chasing attention in Montecito. The life they're living now is nothing like what Meghan promised. She told him they'd be bigger than the royal family, that they'd have more freedom and more impact. Instead, they're watching their importance slip away while Meghan can't figure out what she wants to be. The carefully built story about escaping toxic institutions and living authentically is falling apart because the life they're actually living doesn't match up with the story. Oh, Meghan, you might want to buckle up because your ex-bestie Nanaki Purdy just dropped a mysterious message. On X, the tweet reads, "They sold to the world." And Harry, he's stuck watching it all crumble, unable to admit what's really happening, unable to go back to what he gave up, just trapped in a situation that gets more uncomfortable every single day. Here's what should absolutely terrify Harry about Nanaki's viral moment. It's not just that one friend is speaking up, it's what this represents. The walls are closing in and Meghan's past keeps catching up with her. She spent years creating this image of herself as a misunderstood humanitarian, someone hurt by institutions and media. No wonder Meghan Markle was able to successfully marry into the royal family. Just look at who her best friend is. A woman who just wanted to live authentically. But every person who actually knew her before the fame tells a completely different story. And those voices are getting louder. Nanaki is not going to be the last person to speak up. That's what Harry needs to understand. The pattern of behavior is too consistent. The trail of burned relationships too long for this to quietly go away. As Meghan becomes more desperate for attention, as her ventures keep failing, more people from her past are going to feel empowered to share their truth. The carefully built story is cracking wide open, and every new voice makes those cracks bigger. It's spooky season, as I've been told by my team, and there's no better way to celebrate the season than carving up. Think about what that means for Harry's kids, Archie and Lilibet. Right now, they're young and protected from this, but they're going to grow up. They're going to have access to social media and all these stories about their mom. What happens when they're teenagers asking questions about why they don't have relationships with certain family members or why there are all these people from their mom's past saying these things? You think the people trying to erase Nanaki can memory hold to actual human beings who lived through this? That's not how reality works. The desperation is showing more and more. Just when you think she's run out of ways to make everything about herself, Meghan Markle digs up an old high school photo and spins it into a heartwarming throwback. Meghan's importance is slipping despite all her attempts to grab it back. Every celebrity campaign she joins, every brand launch that flops, every venture that fizzles out makes the desperation more obvious. And the harder she tries to maintain control, the more people seem willing to break their silence. It's like watching someone try to hold sand in their fist. The tighter they squeeze, the more it slips through their fingers. What's really devastating is that Harry's watching all of this and he can't do anything about it. He gave up everything for promises that haven't come true. My very first short. So, Neil Sean put out a video yesterday or the day before saying that, he's in Montecito, watching his wife attend events that wouldn't have been on her radar before. Watching her chase attention through ventures that keep failing, watching the past catch up. And he's stuck because admitting any of this publicly would mean admitting he was wrong about everything. It would mean facing the reality that maybe the people who warned him just saw what he couldn't see. The question isn't whether more people are going to speak up. The question is how many more and how loud they're going to get. Because as long as Meghan keeps trying to stay in the spotlight, the people who knew her before Meghan Markle's longtime BFF, Jessica Mulroney, has split from her husband after 16 years. Split confirmation cup, are going to keep sharing their experiences, and eventually the gap between the public image and the reality becomes impossible to ignore. That's the nightmare Harry's living through right now. So here we are, Nanaki Pretty, a woman who's known Meghan since they were 2 years old, has to go viral defending her own existence because the truth about their friendship doesn't fit the story people want to believe. That's where we're at. When childhood best friends become conspiracy theory battlegrounds. When decades of shared history get questioned and attacked. Harry owes me? Meghan owes me. Something seriously wrong with the picture being painted. The harder anyone tries to erase the past, the more attention it gets. And that's exactly what's happening here. Meghan spent years building this carefully crafted image, controlling every detail of the story she wanted people to believe. But you can't control what people who actually knew you remember. You can't rewrite history when there are photos, memories, and real human beings who lived through it all. Nanaki is not some random person making stuff up online. She's someone with 3 decades of first-hand experience. Now you get to be part of rebuilding. And I know sometimes people say, how many times do we need to rebuild? Well, you know what? We are going to. And no amount of conspiracy theories or attacks can change that reality. The truth has this funny way of coming up eventually, no matter how deep you try to bury it. And Harry, he's watching his entire world crumble around him. The promises haven't come true. The ventures keep failing. The past keeps catching up. And he can't say a word about any of it. Because admitting the truth means admitting he gave up everything for nothing. That's the real tragedy here. He's trapped in a life that looks nothing like what he was told it would be. Surrounded by the wreckage of burned bridges and failed dreams. Meghan Markle gifted Khloe Kardashian a fancy basket featuring her as ever products including wine, honey, and fresh produce. Unable to even acknowledge what's right in front of him. The question everyone's asking is simple. How much longer can this actually last? How long before the gap between the public image and the reality becomes obvious to ignore? How long before Harry finally admits what everyone else already sees? The carefully built facade is cracking. The voices from the past are getting louder, and the desperation is showing more every single day. At some point, something's got to give. So, what do you think when even a childhood best friend has to prove she exists just to defend herself? Where does this all go from here? Drop your thoughts in the comments because I want to hear what you're thinking about all of this. And if you made it this far, hit that like button, make sure you're subscribed, and turn on those notifications because trust me, this story is far from over and you're not going to want to miss what happens next.